You may know that the Natalie Miller Fellowship was established 3 years ago to recognise the unique contribution of Natalie Miller, OAM. And the fellowship's been set up to award a grant of up to $10,000 each year for women who demonstrate initiative, entrepreneurship and excellence in the screen industries. And they need to then, do a professional development proposal to show how that woman can reach her full potential and also how that can benefit the wider screen community. The inaugural NMF winner was Rachel Okine at Hopscotch Features. The 2012 winner, Harriet Pike, joins us on the panel tonight, and I'll introduce her properly and the others in a moment. Quick word on Natalie. Unstoppable, unique, probably the two key words you need to know. Probably best known as the co-founder of the Nova and Sharmal Films, the only distribution company in Australia established and run by a woman. She's also worked at the ABC, MIF, the Women's Film Fund of the Australian Film Commission, Cinema Papers, Film Victoria, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image, the Australian Film Institute, Women in Film and Television, and the Swinburne and VCA Schools of Film and Television. So we welcome her, and we hope that the spirit of the evening is to both honour her, more importantly, honour her sort of pioneering role. I want to ask all four of you to pick a few women who you see as great examples in the industry. Haven't prepped them, by the way, for any of these questions, so you have to give them thinking time.
I'll go for it.
Yeah,
I'm going to play home again. I've got some fantastic ladies within my organisation, and hopefully one day one of them in particular will replace me as MD.
Oh, so you're not going to say their names?
No. But I think some people will know who I'm talking about in the room. But she's very smart, extremely creative. She's great at managing and motivating people. She asks really smart questions that cut to the absolute essence of the issue. And she's always very willing to put a different perspective on the table. And I think that's very inspiring as a leader to look at two perspectives and come to a better decision.
Probably the majority of our successful Australian films have been produced by women. And I don't know what it is in this country, but we produce amazing, amazing producers who just happen to be women. People like Robin Kershaw, who we've done 2 films with, Looking for Alibrandi and Brand New Day. Rosemary Blight is incredible. Jan Chapman is absolutely remarkable. And I could go on and on with a very, very long list of women who I've worked with. Leah Churchill-Brown, Rachel Ward, Kate Woods, many, many women who have worked either on producing or directing, and the list of directors is much, much shorter. But the number of female producers in this country who are not only at the top of their own game, but really lead the industry, I think probably outweighs men, and that's a really interesting thing. But certainly, when you are as a distributor, when you sign on to make a film, it's a very considered decision, because it's a bit like a marriage. You're going to be with the team, the creative team, for many, many years.
Yes.
And I would suggest that you really want to know who you're going to be working with, and some of these women have proved to be incredible mentors for me. I also want to throw out 2 others. I've sat on the board of the Melbourne Film Festival for a number of years, and Claire Dobbin is the most remarkable chair. She is just incredible and inspiring, and has taught me a lot about how to be a good board member and how to work within an organisation. And the other one, who I only got to serve with very, very recently, because tragically she passed away earlier this year, was Lorraine Elliott, who was chair here at ACMI. And she took over and had very big boots to fill from John Thwaites, who was a remarkable chair. And just the most inspiring woman who we got to work with for a very short period.
Caterina Donave, who sadly is no longer with us, was a fantastic person at SBS. She worked tirelessly to encourage and support, especially newer filmmakers, because SBS could only afford newer filmmakers. But she is another one. I mean, there are people within the networks, and there are I don't deal with women so much in the distribution companies, but there are terrific women in the networks, but they're not the programmers. And I think that is one of the problems in television, is that it's about the programmers. And I mean, television is changing here, and there are some fantastic shows on TV now that are directed at women, and some of them are directed. I mean, I've just been on the set of Secret River this afternoon, which Dana Reid is directing, and she's done a lot of terrific television. There are women there, but as you said, they're not in the majority, and they are in fact in an alarmingly small minority.
So for the first time, to my knowledge, we actually have a female managing director looking after the Australian interests of a Hollywood studio. I don't know if people know that in this room. Her name's Catherine Powell. She's come from the UK, and she has a huge job, because the Disney job is looking after theatrical, home entertainment, licensing and merchandising, digital and TV. So that's somebody that I think could be incredibly inspirational for people, in terms of somebody that's on their own merits got to the top, running a territory for a big company like Disney.
You need to understand the mechanics of how everything is working in order to then determine how you can fit into that. So it is, I wouldn't say it's tilted necessarily towards men. There's definitely more men, and it makes it challenging to see where you fit into that, but you can, I think, if you have the will and the intention and the drive to do it.
Okay.
Most of the time it'll work.
One of the things that we know is that if women are writing and women are directing projects, then there are much better portrayal of women in those films and TV shows. And that, that's an ongoing thing, because then women see that they can, make these things, and then they make more of them, and we get more role models on the screens. I don't know the answer, but I do know that there is an issue, and I think that if all of us are talking about it, all of us are thinking about it, all of us are looking at what's passing over our desks and consciously saying, am I making a decision based on the gender or that is more familiar to me, or I get this script because I'm a bloke and it's about boys, or whatever. I don't know, but I think we need to be much more conscious about what we're doing, what we're selecting, and what gets up there on the screens.
Yeah, Joel, I just wonder if the point that Annie was making about, I mean, she's clearly feeling the level field's not quite even. Do you see that yourself or not?
It's interesting, because we've just been going through a bit of a restructure at Roadshow, and we've just sort of been through some quite substantial staff changes. And we've ended up in a situation where, in terms of our senior, on the marketing side of the business, in terms of our marketing business, our deputy marketing director is a woman. And we have 4 senior marketing roles, and 3 of them are all women. And they didn't get the job. None of them got the job because they were women. They got the job because they were the most talented executive. And I think it almost, in many respects, demeans their achievements to start talking about their gender, because they didn't get the job because of their gender. They got the job because they were far and away the best applicants among a pretty large field. So, I feel like, particularly in the space that I work, I'm fortunate in that this is not an issue that I grapple with daily, and there seems to be, frankly, a larger representation of women than men, frankly, in the space.
Is it simply, we're just going to tell women, lean in a bit more, find a good role model, or are there things that need to be done? I guess, with political parties, it's about quotas. I don't know if we start with Harriet, but do we need to actually have structures that foster and encourage women? Because there are great women there doing things, but there's an imbalance. I don't know if you want to start, Harriet.
I think, there is still definitely work to be done, because I think particularly when you follow the money, the big money, it's the same outside of our industry. It's the publicly listed company. I mean, that is still predominantly men. You look at board positions of here or in the US of those companies, there's huge, inequalities there if you look at the numbers. And all of this is part of a much bigger structural, cultural problem where, and I think that a lot of men are very supportive of women being in those leadership roles with them, but sometimes they don't even know not even aware that the issue is as such, and as women aren't either. And
So
that's why
unaware of what issue?
the fact that there aren't women there, that they don't know how to get there, that the jobs aren't, you know, opening up for them necessarily, and women don't always know that they can go after them. I mean, it's not always at a conscious level, and it's broadly in, you know, the way women are portrayed in media, the way society sees, you know, so it's a much deeper thing, and I think gradually it is getting better, but you know, it's not as simple as I think, you know, certainly quotas are important to get that started, because it makes people start thinking differently about it, to start the change, but it's a complex issue.
Okay. I mentioned the pathways thing.
Yeah.
Why? I think you said you would like to have something like that.
If you tell me a little bit more about it.
I'll give you a few ideas if you want them.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't know. Look, I know that for media organisations, when you have cadetship programs,
Yeah.
you balance that out
Yeah.
on a gender basis. Now,
Sure.
I don't know how it works in the industry, but are there? I don't know if those things exist, but are there ways? That's where you start, isn't
Yeah.
it? At the junior level,
Yeah.
you make sure that the places are given out equally.
I mean, I work in a relatively small company for a very big company, but we have 29 people working for Fox in Australia. Interestingly, 16, I've done my homework, 16 are women and 13 are men. We have a very, very strong bias to females in our marketing department and a very strong bias to men in our sales department. But more importantly, I think for the question you asked, we're a very flat structure. So the ability to promote from within is very difficult. So what I've tried to do to compensate for that is to create a leadership group, which is the next level down. So head of promotions, head of publicity, sales manager, because I think leadership, a very important part of leadership is being able to manage and be successful in cross-functional relationships outside of your specific field of expertise. And that's managing conflict. And within a small company of 29, when you know each other's kids' names, that's sometimes difficult, but it's incredibly important to be fact-based and not get emotional about it, and just communicate you're trying to do a really good job. And then essentially what I've given that group of people, and about 6 of them, is problems to solve. And I'm not suggesting it's been easy and we didn't get out of the blocks fast, but the opportunity is there to encourage people to demonstrate they've got leadership potential. And
I suppose the implicit assumption in what you're saying is that that process is gender blind, that when you bring people into the leadership group?
No, it's basically, we took the top layer of the directors off the organisation and looked at who was underneath, and they formed the leadership group.
So in your company, you couldn't see some sort of formal structure that you would need to make a difference, or that you would want to make a difference?
I think in a small company it's more difficult. I think we've probably pushed that to a pretty decent level. I think it's much easier, you know, for a newspaper, for example, or a big media network to be able to do that. But I think when you have a flat structure, the ability to give people projects that are outside of their normal regime is important, because it demonstrates if they've got growth in them, if they've got the ability, whether they're male or female.
Yeah. Yes, but I don't know if there's anything you think companies can do, industry can do, some sort of formal thing to help?
Look, I think there's always more that can be done, and I think one of the reasons for that is that leadership as a concept is generally foisted upon people, and it's often foisted upon people who have great talent. And whether they are a good leader or a great leader, or frankly a mediocre leader, will emerge during their role. That will be determined. But I think there's a lot that people are going to learn on the job, and I think they could be enormously aided by a level of mentorship. You know, and I tell this story, which is, I've never told this story, but I want to tell it because it's a little bit of my own. It's a little embarrassing, but I'm happy to say it. Early in my career, it was probably right at the time when I was first given any real level of responsibility and staff to manage. I was summoned to the CEO of Village Roadshow's offices, and he said, you know, you've got a big job ahead of you to unite the team. And I said, I know. And he said, yeah, I want you to read this. And he handed me a book. I'd never heard of it. Many of you will have. It displays my youthful ignorance at the age of 26. But it was a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is, you know, a very, very famous book. And I said thank you, and I walked out of his office, and I was completely offended. I thought, if I'm being given this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's clearly he has no idea what a good leader I am. Let me just say that. But you know, I mean, the title of that book. Listen to what it's telling me to do. Anyway, I got over my hubris and I read the book over the next 48 hours, and it taught me a lot of things. And it taught me a lot of things about myself and what I wanted to be, even though it was a book that at the time I think was over 50 years old. But a lot of the tenets within the book had real resonance. And since that time, it's always occurred to me that, you know, there's anybody who thinks they're a good leader probably isn't, because leadership is a constant process of learning and of being willing to listen and to apply elements of leadership from a perspective of from a morality perspective, from an ethical perspective, but also from doing what is right in order to demonstrate characteristics that you hope the rest of your team or the people who you work with will pick up. And that's not really a gender thing. That's just a thing. But I would suggest that there is a lot that companies could do to mentor emerging leaders, both men and women. They could both benefit from it.